The Absent Father Effect on Daughters by Susan E. Schwartz. Introduction. Have you ever looked in the mirror and quietly asked yourself, why do I feel this constant emptiness? Why do I struggle with self-worth or keep finding myself in broken relationships? You're successful, driven, maybe even admired. Yet deep inside, there's a nagging ache you can't seem to shake. For countless women, that ache traces back to something often hidden, overlooked, or buried: the absence of their father. Whether your father was physically absent, emotionally unavailable, or present but distant, the wound it leaves runs deep, impacting your confidence, your relationships, your career, even how you see yourself when no one's watching. In this video, we explore The Absent Father Effect on Daughters by Susan E. Schwartz, a groundbreaking book that unveils how a father's absence silently shapes identity, self-esteem, love, and success. More importantly, it offers insight on how to break free from these invisible chains and reclaim your life. You'll discover why these patterns happen, how to identify them in your life, and the empowering steps to heal and finally step into your worth. This isn't just information, it's your invitation to healing, self-discovery, and transformation. Because your father's absence may have shaped your past, but it does not define your future. Let's begin. Section 1. Understanding the Absent Father Effect. Let's begin by unraveling one of the most misunderstood experiences in a woman's life: the absent father effect. When people hear the term absent father, their minds often jump straight to physical absence. A man who left, abandoned his family, or never showed up at all. But what Susan E. Schwartz powerfully exposes in The Absent Father Effect on Daughters is that absence comes in many forms, and often the most damaging kind is the one no one sees: emotional absence. You can grow up in the same house as your father, eat dinner at the same table, even share family vacations, yet still feel utterly invisible, disconnected, and unsupported. Absence isn't always as clear-cut as walking out the door. Emotional unavailability, psychological neglect, or even subtle indifference can leave wounds as deep, sometimes deeper, than outright abandonment. Imagine growing up feeling like you have to earn love, work hard to be noticed, or shrink parts of yourself to fit into someone else's expectations. That's the silent echo of an absent father, shaping your self-worth, your relationships, and your sense of identity, often without you even realizing it. It's important to understand that this absence isn't solely about the father's intention or character flaws. Some fathers themselves were never shown how to connect emotionally, weighed down by their own generational wounds, cultural expectations, or psychological limitations. Yet, regardless of the reasons behind it, the effect on a daughter can be profound, lingering long after childhood fades into adulthood. You may recognize this pattern in your own life. Do you ever find yourself doubting your worth, even after achieving success? Do relationships feel like a constant push-pull between craving connection and fearing rejection? Are you drawn to emotionally unavailable partners, repeating the cycle of longing and disappointment? These aren't random quirks. They are often the hidden fingerprints of the absent father effect. Take Sarah's story, for example. On the outside, Sarah's family looked picture perfect. Her father never physically left. He provided for the family, showed up for school events, even smiled in family photos. But behind the surface, Sarah felt invisible. Her father never asked about her dreams, never offered emotional support, and dismissed her feelings as too sensitive. As a child, she didn't have the language to name what was happening. But as an adult, the effects showed up everywhere. She doubted her worth at work, second-guessed herself in relationships, and constantly craved validation from others. This is the invisible form of absence that can be so hard to identify. You may grow up surrounded by people, yet feel deeply unseen. You may succeed in your career, yet battle an inner critic whispering that you're not enough. You may attract partners who mirror your father's emotional distance, keeping you locked in cycles of hurt and longing. Recognizing these patterns is the first courageous step toward healing. Awareness isn't about blame, it's about clarity. You can't change the past, but you can break its hold on your future. You can start seeing your behaviors, fears, and longings not as personal flaws, but as understandable responses to unmet childhood needs. The absent father effect matters because it helps explain the unexplainable. It connects the dots between childhood wounds and adult struggles. It empowers you to see your life with compassion and to know that you're not broken. You've been shaped by experiences that left gaps, and those gaps can be healed. So here's the reflective challenge for you today. Ask yourself, in what ways has your father's absence, physical or emotional, shaped how you see yourself? Be honest. Be gentle. The answers may not come immediately, but simply opening that door begins the process of reclaiming your power. Because understanding the absent father effect isn't just about naming the pain. It's about breaking free from its invisible grip, one courageous insight at a time. Section 2. The psychological imprint on daughters. When a father is absent, whether physically gone, emotionally distant, or psychologically unavailable, his absence doesn't just hover in the background of a daughter's life. It imprints itself onto her psyche, subtly shaping the way she thinks, feels, and interacts with the world. This imprint isn't always visible to others. It doesn't always manifest in dramatic breakdowns or obvious dysfunction. Often, it hides behind success, ambition, independence, or even perfectionism. But make no mistake, it's there. Susan E. Schwartz describes this imprint as a kind of invisible blueprint etched into the subconscious. It dictates how a daughter sees herself, what she believes she deserves, and how safe she feels to show vulnerability. One of the most common imprints left by an absent father is low self-worth. Without the foundational presence of a father figure affirming her value, many daughters grow up with an internal sense of, "I'm not good enough." It's a quiet, persistent belief that whispers beneath the surface of every achievement, relationship, or opportunity. But it doesn't stop there. Another powerful psychological imprint is perfectionism. You might think perfectionism is about ambition or high standards, but often it's rooted in a desperate need for validation. When a daughter doesn't receive consistent love and approval from her father, she can internalize the belief that she has to be perfect to earn love. The bar keeps moving higher, and no achievement ever feels like enough. Then there's the fear of rejection, perhaps the most crippling imprint of all. If your father rejected you emotionally, neglected you, or simply wasn't available when you needed him most, it sends a message to your subconscious. Love is conditional, inconsistent, and unsafe. As a result, daughters may avoid vulnerability, self-expression, or deep relationships, all to protect themselves from repeating that original rejection. Lisa's story is a textbook example of how this imprint shows up in adulthood. From the outside, Lisa's life looks impressive. She's thriving in her career, earning promotions, respected by her colleagues. But internally, she battles with imposter syndrome, the nagging belief that she's a fraud, that any day now, people will discover she's not good enough. No matter how many successes she racks up, her inner critic drowns out the praise. The root of this self-doubt? Lisa's father was emotionally absent throughout her childhood. He provided financially, but never acknowledged her efforts, never showed pride, never reinforced her inherent worth. Now, as an adult, her mind replays the same narrative. You're not enough. This psychological imprint bleeds into every area: love, career, confidence, and even how a woman relates to herself. It creates cycles of self-sabotage, where no amount of external success can fill the internal void. It can cause women to overcompensate by being hyper-independent, overly responsible, or people-pleasing, all in an unconscious attempt to fill the space their father left behind. But here's the empowering truth. This imprint, while deep, is not permanent. It's a learned pattern, not a life sentence. The first step toward healing is awareness, identifying the negative thought loops that replay in your mind, especially those rooted in self-doubt and low worth. Begin by noticing the moments when you criticize yourself, downplay your accomplishments, or fear rejection. Ask yourself, where did I first learn to believe this? More often than not, the trail leads back to that early absence, the unmet need for your father's love, approval, and validation. Awareness shines a light on the invisible patterns that have shaped your inner world. It allows you to separate your true self from the stories and imprints left by your father's absence. You are not inherently unworthy. You are not defined by rejection. You are not required to be perfect to deserve love. Consider this your reflective challenge today. What beliefs about yourself might actually belong to an unmet need for fatherly validation? Sit with that question. Be honest. You may uncover hidden fears, insecurities, or behaviors that you've carried for years, not because they reflect who you truly are, but because they were written into your psyche by a missing piece of your childhood. The absent father effect isn't just about loss. It's about understanding how loss quietly rewrites the script of your life. But with awareness, compassion, and courage, you can reclaim the pen. You can rewrite those internal messages, dismantle the negative imprints, and finally begin to see yourself through the lens of truth. Worthy, whole, and more than enough, exactly as you are. Section 3. Father Hunger. The longing that never ends. There's a term that captures the deep, persistent ache many women carry without even realizing it. It's called father hunger. Susan E. Schwartz introduces this concept as the unconscious, unending longing for the love, protection, and approval that a father was meant to provide. It's not always loud. It doesn't always show up as tears or anger. Often father hunger disguises itself in ambition, people-pleasing, and an insatiable need for validation, especially from emotionally unavailable people. Father hunger isn't about weakness. It's not about being needy or desperate. It's a very human response to a missing piece, a space that was supposed to be filled by a father's consistent presence and love. For daughters whose fathers were absent, physically, emotionally, or psychologically, that hunger often lingers like a background hum, influencing their choices, relationships, and self-perception. This longing manifests in countless subtle but destructive ways. You might find yourself chasing relationships that mirror the dynamic you had with your father, partners who are distant, dismissive, or unavailable, because deep down, you're still trying to win the approval your father never gave. You might pour yourself into work, achievements, or perfectionism, hoping that success will finally fill the void or silence the inner critic. You might overextend yourself, saying yes when you mean no, all in an unconscious attempt to feel seen, loved, or worthy. Michelle's story is a clear example of how father hunger can quietly drive our choices. Growing up, Michelle's father was in and out of her life, inconsistent, unreliable, and emotionally detached. As an adult, she found herself repeatedly drawn to partners who mirrored that same emotional distance. Time and again, she fell for men who couldn't commit, who withheld affection, or who made her feel like she had to earn their love. Even when friends pointed out the pattern, Michelle couldn't see it. Deep down, her father hunger kept pulling her toward the familiar, a toxic cycle rooted in unmet childhood needs. It wasn't until Michelle began reflecting on her past that the pieces fell into place. Her constant yearning for attention, her tolerance for emotional neglect, her fear of setting boundaries, they weren't random behaviors. They were symptoms of father hunger, an invisible force silently shaping her relationships and sense of self. Understanding father hunger matters because, left unchecked, it keeps us trapped in cycles that hurt us. It convinces us to accept less than we deserve. It whispers that love must be earned, that we are incomplete without someone's approval, and that rejection is inevitable. This hunger is powerful because it's rooted in such a primal need, the need for a father's love, safety, and affirmation. But here's the truth. No amount of chasing emotionally unavailable people, overachieving or pleasing others will satisfy that hunger. The only real path to healing starts with awareness, becoming conscious of how father hunger shows up in your life. Ask yourself, are you drawn to relationships where you feel you have to prove your worth? Do you constantly seek external validation to feel good enough? Are you overworking, overgiving, or overcompensating in the hope that someone will finally see you? The answer to father hunger isn't found outside of you. It's found within. It begins by recognizing that the love and approval you crave may never come from the source you wanted, your father. But you have the power to give those things to yourself now. You can reparent your inner child, build healthy self-worth, and create boundaries that protect your energy and peace. Healing doesn't mean the longing disappears overnight. It means you stop letting that hunger dictate your life. You stop chasing the unavailable. You stop shrinking your worth to fit someone else's inability to love fully. You begin to rewrite the narrative, choosing relationships, careers, and environments that nourish your whole being, not just your wounds. Today's reflective challenge invites you to go deeper. Where in your life do you seek approval at the expense of your true worth? Be honest. Look at your relationships, your work, even your self-talk. Notice where you're settling, overcompensating, or sacrificing your boundaries just to feel valued. That awareness is the first step toward breaking free from the endless cycle of father hunger. Remember, the longing may have started with your father's absence, but it doesn't have to define your life. You have the power to meet your own needs now, to cultivate self-worth, to choose love rooted in mutual respect, and to fill the spaces within you with compassion, not desperation. Father hunger may never fully disappear, but it can lose its grip when you reclaim your worth, your choices, and your healing. Section 4. The Mirror of Self-Worth. One of the most profound effects of an absent father is how it distorts a daughter's internal mirror, the way she sees herself, her worth, and her potential. Imagine holding up a mirror every day, only to find that the reflection staring back at you is cracked, foggy, and warped. You can't see your beauty clearly. You can't recognize your strengths. You struggle to trust your own value because the foundation that was supposed to help shape your self-image, your father's presence and affirmation, is missing or damaged. This is the painful reality for countless women affected by the absent father dynamic. Susan E. Schwartz explains that a father's role is not only to protect and provide, but also to act as an emotional mirror. A loving, present father reflects back to his daughter her worth, her abilities, her right to take up space in the world. Through his eyes, she learns that she is seen, valued, and enough. But when that mirror is missing, whether through physical absence, emotional neglect, or psychological distance, the daughter's self-image becomes vulnerable to distortion. Instead of seeing strength, she may only see flaws. Instead of recognizing her inherent worth, she may constantly search for external validation. Her confidence feels fragile, her body image suffers, and boundaries become a foreign concept. Without the foundational reflection of worth, she becomes susceptible to insecurity, self-doubt, and the dangerous belief that love must be earned through perfection or people-pleasing. This distorted mirror impacts every area of life. You might notice it when you shy away from opportunities, believing you're not qualified enough. You might feel it in relationships where you tolerate disrespect because deep down, you question your value. You might even see it in how you criticize your appearance, focusing only on perceived flaws while ignoring your beauty and uniqueness. Take Jasmine's story as a powerful example of this. Growing up, Jasmine's father was physically present, but emotionally unavailable. He never told her she was beautiful, smart, or capable. Instead, he criticized, compared, or ignored her altogether. Over time, Jasmine internalized those messages. Her mirror reflected only what she believed to be shortcomings, never enough, never worthy, never whole. As an adult, despite her achievements and the admiration of others, Jasmine struggled to believe in her value. She questioned her abilities, sabotaged relationships, and battled with negative body image. But Jasmine's story didn't end there. She eventually realized that the mirror she had been using to measure herself wasn't hers. It was inherited, shaped by her father's absence and emotional distance. Determined to reclaim her self-worth, Jasmine began a healing journey. She started with affirmations, simple but powerful phrases like, "I am worthy," "I am enough," and "My worth is not defined by others." At first, these words felt foreign, even untrue, but over time, repetition chipped away at the old narratives. Jasmine also sought support through therapy and women's groups where she met others with similar stories. Hearing their experiences, validating each other's pain, and celebrating each other's growth created a new, healthier mirror. Slowly but surely, Jasmine began to see herself more clearly, not through the lens of abandonment, but through the eyes of self-compassion and truth. Rebuilding your internal mirror isn't easy, but it is entirely possible. It starts by recognizing that the distorted reflection you've carried may not be your true self. The beliefs of unworthiness, the critical inner voice, the insecurity around your appearance or abilities, they're often echoes of an absent father's failure to reflect your inherent value. The practical steps to rebuild your mirror include daily self-compassion practices, affirmations, and surrounding yourself with people who reflect your worth back to you in healthy ways. It also means setting boundaries, protecting yourself from relationships or environments that perpetuate the belief that you're not enough. Therapy, coaching, and support groups can offer a structured path toward healing, helping you replace the cracked mirror with one that reflects your true beauty, strength, and worth. Here's your reflective challenge. When you look in the mirror, whose reflection do you see? Your true self or an inherited wound? Be honest with yourself. Notice the moments when self-doubt creeps in. Catch the negative self-talk that tells you you're not enough. Ask yourself, is this really my truth? Or is this a distorted message I've carried from my father's absence? Healing the mirror of self-worth is a journey, but every step matters. With each act of self-love, every boundary set, every affirmation spoken, you begin to see yourself as you truly are, worthy, capable, and whole, regardless of who was absent in your life. Your father's absence may have distorted your reflection, but it does not define your identity. You have the power to rebuild your mirror, and when you do, the world will reflect back the confident, radiant, powerful woman you've always been. Section 5. Relationship Struggles. Love in the Shadow of Absence. Romantic relationships are one of the most telling mirrors of our inner wounds, and for many women affected by an absent father, love becomes an arena where old pain quietly resurfaces. Susan E. Schwartz's The Absent Father Effect on Daughters reveals a sobering but empowering truth. Unless we consciously heal, we often recreate the emotional landscape of our childhood in our adult relationships. The longing for love, approval, and validation that wasn't met by our fathers often drives us into partnerships that echo the very absence we experienced growing up. It happens so subtly that many women don't even realize the connection. You may find yourself repeatedly drawn to emotionally unavailable partners, chasing affection that feels just out of reach. You might notice a pattern of intense, unstable relationships where the highs feel euphoric, but the lows leave you feeling abandoned, rejected, or invisible. A painful yet familiar emotional rhythm that mirrors the inconsistent love of an absent father. Or perhaps, despite craving connection, you push people away, fearing intimacy because deep down, love feels unsafe or unreliable. This is the shadow of absence. When a father is emotionally distant, physically absent, or psychologically unavailable, his daughter learns early on that love is conditional, inconsistent, or disappointing. She internalizes the belief that she must work for love, earn attention, and accept breadcrumbs of affection, even if it means sacrificing her self-worth. Without healing, this belief system becomes the foundation for adult romantic relationships, leading to cycles of heartbreak, unfulfilling connections, and emotional abandonment, the very thing she feared. Emily's story is a powerful illustration of this dynamic. Growing up, Emily's father was physically present but emotionally detached. He provided financially, but emotionally, he was unavailable. No hugs, no words of encouragement, no validation. As an adult, Emily found herself trapped in a painful pattern. Every relationship she entered followed the same script. She'd fall for emotionally distant partners, charming but unavailable, spending months, even years, trying to prove her worth, earn their love, or fix the relationship. Time after time, she was left feeling rejected, unworthy, and alone. For years, Emily believed the problem was with the men she dated. But through therapy and self-reflection, she uncovered the deeper truth. Her unconscious mind was replaying the familiar dance of her father's absence. She was choosing partners who, like her father, withheld emotional closeness, because part of her still believed love had to be chased, earned, or fought for. Once Emily made this connection, everything changed. She realized that her relationship patterns weren't a reflection of her worth. They were echoes of unhealed childhood wounds. With this awareness, she began making different choices. She stopped entertaining emotionally unavailable partners. She set boundaries, prioritized her emotional needs, and slowly rebuilt her understanding of healthy love. It wasn't easy, but with time, Emily broke the cycle, choosing relationships aligned with her healed self, not her hidden wounds. Breaking free from the shadow of absence requires conscious effort. The first step is awareness, seeing the patterns, connecting the dots, and understanding how your father's absence may still be influencing your choices in love. Ask yourself, do I choose partners who make me feel seen, valued, and emotionally safe? Or do I gravitate toward relationships that mirror my father's emotional distance? This isn't about blame. It's about empowerment. You can't change your past, but you can change your patterns. The next step is consciously choosing partners aligned with your healed self. That means setting boundaries, recognizing red flags early, and prioritizing emotional availability over fleeting attraction. It means valuing yourself enough to walk away from anyone who triggers your abandonment wounds, no matter how intense the chemistry feels. Healing also involves building your self-worth outside of relationships so that your sense of identity and confidence isn't dependent on external validation. It's important to remember that love, at its healthiest, is not about chasing, proving, or suffering. True love feels safe, consistent, and affirming. If you find yourself stuck in cycles of anxiety, insecurity, or longing, it may be a sign that your hidden father wounds are running the show. Here's your reflective challenge for today. Are your relationships reflections of your healed self or your hidden father wounds? Be brutally honest. Look at the dynamics you've tolerated, the partners you've chosen, and the emotional patterns that keep resurfacing. Notice if you've been trying to rewrite your childhood story by chasing unavailable love, hoping that this time it will be different. Healing from the absent father effect doesn't mean you'll never feel triggered or insecure again. It means you'll have the awareness and tools to choose differently. To create relationships rooted in mutual respect, emotional safety, and authenticity. You have the power to break the cycle, to step out of the shadow of absence, and to build love based on your true worth, not your old wounds. The first step is seeing the pattern, and the next is choosing a new path. Section 6. The Hidden Grief. Mourning what was never there. There's a particular kind of grief that isn't always visible to the outside world. The grief for something that never truly existed. For many daughters of absent fathers, this grief runs deep, yet it often remains buried, unspoken, and misunderstood. Susan E. Schwartz, in The Absent Father Effect on Daughters, calls attention to this hidden sorrow, the pain of mourning what was never fully there in the first place. It's what psychologists call ambiguous loss, the complex emotional experience of losing someone who is physically present but emotionally absent, or someone who was never consistently present at all. Unlike the grief that follows a death, this type of loss is harder to explain, even to ourselves. How do you mourn a relationship that technically existed, but left you empty? How do you grieve for a father who showed up for birthdays, but never asked how you were really doing? Or a father who provided financially, but withheld affection, love, or emotional support? It creates a confusing paradox. You feel the absence, but there's nothing tangible to point to. No clear moment of loss, no socially recognized rituals to process the pain. This is the hidden grief that countless women carry. The quiet, unresolved sorrow that lingers beneath the surface. And when that grief goes unacknowledged, it festers. It can seep into every part of life as depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, or an overwhelming sense of unworthiness. It might show up as chronic people-pleasing, self-sabotage, or staying stuck in relationships that echo the original abandonment. Unacknowledged grief is like an open wound that never properly heals. It affects your mental health, your relationships, and your ability to fully trust yourself and others. But naming this grief, allowing yourself to feel it, honor it, and release it, is one of the most courageous steps toward healing. Olivia's story brings this hidden grief to life. Growing up, Olivia's father was physically present but emotionally unavailable. He never expressed pride in her accomplishments, rarely showed affection, and avoided emotional conversations. On paper, it looked like Olivia had a normal family, but emotionally, she felt unseen, unimportant, and disconnected. For years, Olivia carried an unspoken sadness, a grief for the relationship she never had, the version of her father she longed for but never met. At first, Olivia minimized her feelings. She told herself, "It wasn't that bad," or "Other people have it worse." But the sadness lingered, showing up in moments of self-doubt, failed relationships, and an overwhelming sense of emptiness. It wasn't until she allowed herself to acknowledge her hidden grief that true healing began. One of the most powerful moments in Olivia's journey came when she wrote a symbolic letter to her father. In that letter, she poured out everything she had never said: the hurt, the longing, the anger, the sadness. She wrote about the moments he was absent, the love she wished he had given, and the ways his emotional distance had shaped her life. The letter wasn't for him, it was for her. A sacred act of giving her grief a voice, of validating her pain, of creating space for closure. When Olivia finished the letter, she didn't send it. Instead, she burned it in a small, personal ceremony. As the paper turned to ash, she felt a release, not an instant fix, but a gentle unraveling of years of unspoken sorrow. For the first time, she honored her hidden grief, and with that, she began to reclaim her worth. Grieving consciously is a powerful tool for anyone carrying the absent father wound. It's about creating intentional space to process the emotions you may have suppressed for years. Journaling can be a daily practice where you explore your feelings, name your pain, and rewrite your internal narrative. Therapy provides a safe space to unpack your grief with the guidance of a trained professional. Closure rituals, like writing unsent letters, lighting candles, or symbolic acts of release, give physical expression to emotions that have been trapped inside. It's important to remember that grief isn't linear. You may have moments of deep sadness followed by periods of peace, only for the grief to resurface unexpectedly. That's normal. Healing doesn't mean erasing the pain. It means integrating it in a way that no longer defines you or holds you back. The hidden grief of an absent father deserves recognition. Your sorrow is valid, even if your loss wasn't dramatic or visible to others. You are allowed to mourn what never was, the missed hugs, the words of affirmation you never heard, the protection you never felt, the unconditional love you craved but didn't receive. Here's your reflective challenge today. What unspoken grief are you carrying, and how can you honor and release it? Sit with this question. Give yourself permission to feel, to remember, to cry if you need to. Your grief is not a weakness. It's a testament to your longing for love, your capacity for connection, and your strength to heal. By acknowledging and honoring your hidden grief, you take back your power. You open the door to deeper healing, healthier relationships, and a life no longer shaped by unexpressed sorrow. Your father's absence may have left a void, but your courage to face that void is how you begin to fill it. Not with more pain, but with self-love, clarity, and emotional freedom. Section 7. The Shadow Father Within. One of the most overlooked yet powerful concepts explored in The Absent Father Effect on Daughters by Susan E. Schwartz is the idea of the shadow father, the internal version of the absent father that lives on long after the actual person is gone or emotionally unavailable. This shadow isn't always obvious. It doesn't walk beside you or call your name, but it echoes in your thoughts, your doubts, your fears, and your self-criticism. The absent father doesn't just disappear from your life. In many ways, he takes up residence inside your mind, shaping how you speak to yourself and how you see the world. The shadow father shows up as the harsh inner critic that tells you you're not good enough, that love must be earned, or that your needs are too much. It manifests in abandonment fears that make relationships feel like walking on a tightrope, constantly bracing for rejection. It whispers in negative self-talk, in moments when you undermine your achievements or shrink yourself to avoid disappointment. Essentially, the absence of your father becomes internalized, turning into an invisible authority figure who dictates your self-perception and emotional safety. This is why healing from an absent father isn't just about processing the external circumstances. Whether your father left physically, was emotionally distant, or unavailable in more subtle ways. True healing requires confronting the internalized absence, the shadow father that still governs your inner world. If left unchallenged, this internal shadow becomes the loudest voice in the room, drowning out your worth, your confidence, and your ability to trust yourself. Many women live under the influence of this internalized absence without realizing it. They battle low self-worth, constantly strive for perfection, fear rejection, or stay stuck in cycles of self-sabotage, all driven by an internal narrative rooted in early experiences with an absent or emotionally unavailable father. The good news? That internal voice is not your destiny. It's a learned pattern, and with awareness, compassion, and intentional action, it can be rewired. Rachel's story is a beautiful example of what this looks like in practice. Rachel grew up with a father who was physically present but emotionally closed off. He never expressed pride in her, dismissed her feelings, and left her with an aching void of unmet validation. As she entered adulthood, Rachel noticed a familiar voice in her head, critical, cold, and dismissive, much like her father. It told her she wasn't smart enough, deserving enough, or lovable enough. No matter how much she achieved, this inner critic undermined her progress, echoing the emotional neglect she experienced as a child. For years, Rachel believed that voice was her own, that self-criticism was simply who she was. But through therapy and self-awareness, she discovered the truth. This was the shadow father within, the internalized absence that shaped her beliefs about herself. Realizing this was both painful and liberating. Painful because she had been carrying this invisible authority figure for so long. Liberating because with awareness came the power to change. Rachel's healing began with reparenting her wounded inner child, becoming for herself the loving, supportive father figure she never had. She started small. In moments of self-doubt, she paused and asked, "What would a loving, supportive father say to me right now?" Slowly, she replaced the inner critic with an inner nurturer. She practiced self-compassion, celebrated her achievements, comforted herself during difficult moments, and set boundaries with people who echoed her father's emotional unavailability. Reparenting isn't about erasing the past. It's about filling the gaps left by an absent parent with intentional love, validation, and support. It's about becoming the steady, affirming presence your inner child needed, but never received. Over time, Rachel noticed the shadow father's voice growing quieter, replaced by her own voice, grounded, loving, and fiercely protective of her worth. This process takes time, but it's one of the most powerful tools for healing the absent father wound. Self-awareness is the first step. Noticing when the shadow father speaks through self-criticism, abandonment fears, or negative self-talk. The next step is conscious intervention, choosing to speak to yourself with love, patience, and encouragement, even when it feels unfamiliar. Therapy, journaling, affirmations, and inner child work are all effective ways to rewire the internal narrative. It's also important to understand that the shadow father isn't your fault. You didn't create this internalized absence. It was shaped by early experiences beyond your control. But now, as an adult, you hold the power to change the narrative, to silence the critic, and to nurture the parts of yourself that still long for fatherly support. Here's your reflective challenge today. What would it look like to become the loving, supportive father figure your inner child needed? Imagine showing up for yourself with the same protection, encouragement, and unconditional love that a present, emotionally available father would have offered. How would you speak to yourself? What boundaries would you set? How would you affirm your worth, even in moments of fear or self-doubt? The shadow father may have shaped your inner world for years, but he doesn't have to define your future. You can rewrite the script, reclaim your self-worth, and become the steady, supportive presence your inner child always deserved. Healing begins within, and the most powerful father figure you'll ever meet might just be the one you become for yourself. Section 8. The Journey to Wholeness. Reclaiming your identity. The absence of a father leaves more than just an emotional wound. It fragments a daughter's sense of self. Little by little, pieces of identity, confidence, and self-expression break away, often unnoticed, until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back at you. You wonder, who am I without the constant ache for validation? Who am I beneath the layers of self-doubt and fear? This is the question that begins the journey to wholeness, the courageous process of reclaiming the parts of yourself lost, hidden, or abandoned in the shadow of an absent father. Susan E. Schwartz, in The Absent Father Effect on Daughters, reveals that healing isn't simply about moving on. It's about going inward and gathering the fragmented parts of your identity. When a father is absent, physically, emotionally, or psychologically, a daughter often adapts by silencing her voice, shrinking her needs, or molding herself into what she believes will earn love and approval. Over time, these survival strategies become second nature, but they come at a cost. The authentic self, bold, worthy, whole, becomes buried beneath layers of fear, perfectionism, and insecurity. Wholeness is the opposite of that fragmentation. It's about reclaiming your identity, not the version shaped by unmet needs or wounds, but the version rooted in your truth, your worth, and your potential. Wholeness isn't perfection. It's integration. It's about bringing back the lost parts, your voice, your confidence, your boundaries, your dreams, and weaving them into a stronger, more authentic self. This journey matters because wholeness unlocks confidence, authenticity, and empowered relationships. When you're fragmented, you attract situations that mirror your wounds, relationships that trigger insecurity, environments that reinforce self-doubt. But when you reclaim your wholeness, everything shifts. You begin to show up differently, more grounded, more self-assured, more aligned with your truth. You set boundaries, speak your needs, and choose connections that reflect your worth. The path to reclaiming your identity isn't linear, but there are powerful practices to guide you. Self-discovery is at the heart of this journey. Intentionally exploring who you are beyond the absence, beyond the wounds. Therapy provides a safe space to unpack your story, challenge limiting beliefs, and reconnect with your authentic self. Creative expression, through writing, art, music, or movement, allows you to explore emotions and parts of yourself that words alone can't reach. Setting boundaries protects your energy, your healing, and your evolving identity. Vanessa's story beautifully illustrates this process. For years, Vanessa carried the invisible scars of her absent father. Though he was physically present, his emotional absence left her filled with self-doubt, constantly seeking validation through relationships and achievements. She excelled on the surface, but underneath, she felt fragmented, disconnected from her worth, her voice, and her true identity. The turning point came when Vanessa began journaling. What started as scribbled frustrations soon evolved into a deep dialogue with herself, exploring her fears, unpacking her wounds, and slowly rediscovering her authentic voice. She wrote about her dreams, her boundaries, her insecurities. No judgment, just raw honesty. Through the pages of her journal, Vanessa pieced together the parts of herself she had silenced for years. But she didn't stop there. Vanessa also sought mentorship, finding guidance from women who had walked similar paths and emerged whole. Their stories inspired her, reminding her that healing was possible, that wholeness wasn't reserved for the lucky. It was a choice, a commitment to herself. As Vanessa embraced therapy, creative expression, and healthy mentorship, something remarkable happened. She stopped shrinking to fit others' expectations. She set boundaries with emotionally unavailable people. She reclaimed her confidence, her dreams, and her worth. The fragmented pieces of her identity began to align, forming a stronger, more resilient version of herself. not defined by absence, but empowered by self-awareness and healing. This is the journey to wholeness. It's not about erasing the past, but about reclaiming the parts of yourself that were buried beneath the pain. It's about recognizing that your father's absence shaped your story, but it doesn't have to write the ending. You have the power to gather the scattered pieces, to rediscover your voice, your worth, your authentic self. So here's your reflective challenge today. What parts of yourself have been hidden or abandoned, and how can you reclaim them today? Sit with this question. Maybe it's your voice, silenced by fear of rejection. Maybe it's your confidence, buried beneath years of self-doubt. Maybe it's your dreams, forgotten in the struggle to earn love. Whatever pieces you've lost, they are not gone forever. They are waiting to be reclaimed. You deserve to be whole. You deserve to live from a place of authenticity, strength, and self-love. The journey may be long, but every step you take toward yourself is a victory over the absence that once defined you. Wholeness isn't a destination. It's a daily choice to show up for yourself, to embrace your worth, and to rewrite the narrative of your life from a place of power, not pain. Your identity is yours to reclaim, one courageous moment, one healing step at a time. Section 9. Empowerment through awareness. One of the most life-changing yet deceptively simple steps in healing from an absent father is developing awareness. Without awareness, the patterns that shape your life operate in the shadows, quietly influencing your choices, self-worth, relationships, and even your sense of possibility. But the moment you name the absent father effect, everything starts to shift. As Susan E. Schwartz explains in The Absent Father Effect on Daughters, you can't heal what you haven't acknowledged, and awareness is the beginning of reclaiming your power. It's easy to go through life reacting to emotions, falling into unhealthy relationship patterns, or battling self-doubt without ever realizing that these struggles have roots in your early experiences, especially the absence of a father figure. You might think you're just bad at relationships, or that low self-esteem is your natural state, when in fact, they are the echoes of unmet needs, unspoken grief, and distorted self-perceptions rooted in that original absence. Awareness connects the dots. It pulls the hidden influences into the light and offers you the choice to do things differently. Why does this matter so much? Because without awareness, you stay stuck in cycles that hurt you. You repeat familiar patterns, chasing unavailable partners, doubting your worth, fearing rejection, without understanding why. Ignorance keeps you trapped, but awareness unlocks the door to growth, healing, and empowerment. When you can step back and see your patterns not as flaws, but as the natural response to a father's absence, you begin to approach your healing with more compassion and intentionality. Awareness isn't about blame, it's about clarity. It's saying, I see how my father's absence shaped my self-esteem, my relationships, my choices, and now that I see it, I can change it. That's where true empowerment begins. You stop being a passive participant in your own life and become an active creator of your future. Take Megan's story as a powerful example of how awareness transforms pain into growth. For years, Megan struggled with self-sabotage in her career. Every time an opportunity for advancement appeared, she downplayed her abilities, procrastinated, or convinced herself she wasn't ready. At the same time, her romantic relationships followed a predictable pattern. She pursued emotionally unavailable partners, chasing validation that never came. She felt stuck, frustrated, and broken. But everything changed when Megan stumbled upon Susan E. Schwartz's work. Reading The Absent Father Effect on Daughters was like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces of her life clicked into place. She saw the pattern clearly. Her father's emotional absence left her with deep-rooted feelings of unworthiness, driving her to seek external validation while doubting herself internally. Her fear of success, her attraction to unavailable partners, her low self-esteem, they weren't random flaws. They were symptoms of the absent father effect. With that awareness, Megan's life began to shift. She no longer viewed herself as broken, but as someone carrying unhealed wounds, and wounds can heal. She started therapy, joined support groups for women with similar experiences, and committed to studying her patterns without judgment. Slowly, Megan changed her choices. She set boundaries in her relationships, prioritized emotional availability, and stepped into opportunities with growing confidence. Her awareness became her superpower, transforming her pain into growth. You can cultivate the same empowerment through awareness. The first step is observing your life with curiosity instead of criticism. Notice your emotional triggers, relationship patterns, and moments of self-doubt. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" ask, "Where does this come from?" Trace the roots of your struggles, and you may find they lead back to your father's absence. The unmet needs, the unspoken grief, the distorted self-image. Reading resources like Susan E. Schwartz's work deepens this awareness, offering language and validation for experiences you may have carried silently for years. Joining support circles connects you with others walking the same path, reminding you that you're not alone and that healing is possible. Therapy provides personalized guidance, helping you navigate the complexities of your story with compassion and courage. Awareness doesn't mean the pain disappears overnight, but it gives you a map, a way to understand yourself, interrupt harmful patterns, and choose new, healthier paths. It's like turning on a flashlight in the dark. You may not have all the answers, but you can see the terrain clearly enough to navigate forward with intention. And here's the truth. Greater awareness of your story doesn't just empower your present, it transforms your future. When you understand how your past has shaped you, you no longer walk through life blindly repeating old wounds. You make conscious choices in your relationships, your career, your self-worth. You build confidence rooted in understanding, not illusion. You free yourself from the invisible chains of absence and step into the empowered, authentic version of yourself. So, here's your reflective challenge today. How can greater awareness of your story empower your future? Take a moment to sit with that. Where are you still operating on autopilot, repeating patterns that no longer serve you? Where might your father's absence still echo in your self-talk, your relationships, or your choices? And most importantly, what new decisions can you make now, fueled by the clarity that comes from awareness? Your father's absence may have shaped your early story, but awareness gives you the pen to rewrite the chapters ahead. Healing begins with seeing, and once you see, you can never unsee. You can only grow, empowered, intentional, and ready to create the life your true self deserves. Section 10. Breaking the generational cycle. One of the most powerful yet daunting truths about the absent father effect is that, left unaddressed, it doesn't end with you. The pain, the patterns, the distorted beliefs, they often ripple forward, subtly repeating themselves in the next generation. But there's another truth, even more empowering. With conscious effort, you have the ability to break the cycle. You can choose to interrupt the flow of generational wounds and rewrite the story for yourself, your children, and everyone who comes after you. In The Absent Father Effect on Daughters, Susan E. Schwartz emphasizes this critical point. Healing isn't just personal, it's generational. The absent father effect doesn't only manifest in personal struggles like self-doubt, relationship insecurity, or low self-worth. It often shapes how people parent, how they show up in relationships, and how they create or avoid emotional safety in their families. Many daughters of absent fathers carry unconscious wounds that, if unhealed, influence how they raise their own children or engage with their partners. The absence becomes a pattern, passed down like an unwanted inheritance. This isn't always obvious. A woman who grew up with an emotionally distant father may, without realizing it, choose an emotionally unavailable partner, repeating the same cycle of longing and disappointment. Or, fearful of abandonment, she might overcompensate by becoming overly protective or distant with her own children. The emotional absence of one generation quietly echoes into the next, shaping family dynamics in subtle but profound ways. But here's the key. Cycles can be broken. The moment you commit to healing, to understanding your wounds, changing your patterns, and choosing conscious relationships, you disrupt the generational narrative. You become the point of transformation, the person who says, "It stops with me." Take Sophia's story as a powerful example. Sophia grew up with a father who was physically present but emotionally unavailable. He never expressed love, rarely engaged with her emotionally, and dismissed her needs. As an adult, Sophia struggled with intimacy and feared rejection. But the real wake-up call came when she was expecting her first child. She realized the emotional absence she experienced could easily find its way into her parenting if she wasn't intentional about healing. Determined to break the cycle, Sophia dove into inner work. She began therapy to unpack her childhood wounds, attended workshops on conscious parenting, and surrounded herself with mentors who modeled healthy emotional connections. She examined her relationship patterns, set boundaries with emotionally distant relatives, and, most importantly, nurtured herself, becoming the loving, supportive presence she never had growing up. Sophia's healing journey wasn't perfect. There were moments of doubt, fear, and vulnerability. But with each step, she reclaimed her ability to create a different legacy, one of emotional safety, connection, and conscious love. When her child was born, Sophia made a promise to show up with presence, to validate emotions, and to model healthy self-worth. She understood that by healing herself, she wasn't just changing her life. She was shaping a healthier foundation for her family's future. Breaking the generational cycle is both a responsibility and a gift. It requires the courage to look inward, to confront painful truths, and to rewrite the patterns that have shaped your life. It's not about being perfect. It's about being conscious, aware, and committed to growth. To apply this practically, start with inner work. Therapy, journaling, support groups, and self-reflection help you identify the ways your father's absence still affects your beliefs, choices, and behaviors. Pay attention to your relationship patterns. Are you choosing partners who mirror your father's emotional unavailability? Are you avoiding vulnerability out of fear? Awareness is the first step to change. Next, commit to healthy parenting, whether you have children now or plan to in the future. That means modeling emotional availability, creating space for feelings, and building trust through consistency and presence. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be intentional. Breaking the cycle isn't about never making mistakes. It's about showing up differently, repairing when necessary, and creating a foundation of love and emotional safety. Finally, make conscious relationship choices. Choose partners who reflect your healed self, not your wounds. Set boundaries with people who trigger the old patterns. Surround yourself with a support system that reinforces your growth, not your insecurities. Here's your reflective challenge today. What legacy do you want to leave? One of inherited wounds or conscious healing? Sit with that question. Imagine the ripple effect of your healing, how your self-awareness, your boundaries, your emotional availability could positively shape your children, your relationships, and even those around you. Your father's absence may have written the beginning of your story, But you hold the pen now. You get to decide how the next chapters unfold. Breaking the generational cycle isn't easy. It requires patience, persistence, and deep self-compassion. But it's one of the most courageous acts of love you can offer to yourself, to your family, and to the future. You are not destined to repeat the patterns of absence, abandonment, or emotional neglect. You have the power to create a legacy rooted in healing, connection, and conscious love. It starts with you, and the ripple effect is limitless. Section 11. Healing, Hope, and Rewriting Your Story. There comes a point on every healing journey when you realize something profoundly liberating. You are not defined by your absent father. His absence may have shaped you, left wounds, created patterns of fear, insecurity, or longing. But it does not have the final say in who you become. As Susan E. Schwartz reminds us in The Absent Father Effect on Daughters, while absence is real, so is agency. You have the power to rewrite your story, to move from feeling abandoned to feeling empowered, from carrying wounds to embodying wisdom, from defining your life by pain to defining it by growth and self-love. This truth matters deeply because staying stuck in victimhood keeps you frozen. It traps you in cycles of self-doubt, broken relationships, and emotional limitation. Victimhood whispers that you are powerless, that your father's absence controls your destiny, that no matter how hard you try, you'll always be that wounded little girl longing for love and approval. But victimhood is not the whole story. It's only the beginning. Beyond it lies agency, the recognition that, despite what happened to you, you hold the pen now. You can choose how your next chapters are written. Rewriting your story doesn't mean denying the pain or pretending the wounds never happened. It means looking at your life with honesty, compassion, and courage, and saying, yes, this hurt me, but it doesn't get to define me anymore. It means transforming your narrative from one of limitation to one of possibility, from one of absence to one of presence, your presence for yourself. Many women, like Natalie, embody this transformation. Natalie grew up with a father who was emotionally absent and physically inconsistent. His broken promises, disappearing acts, and cold silences left her carrying an unbearable weight of unworthiness. For years, she believed the lie that she wasn't lovable, that she wasn't enough, that her father's absence meant she was inherently flawed. This belief infiltrated every area of her life. In relationships, she clung to people who mirrored her father's distance, mistaking inconsistency for love. At work, she overachieved but never felt accomplished, haunted by the voice of self-doubt her father left behind. Her inner narrative was rooted in lack, in the belief that she was abandoned, damaged, destined to struggle. But Natalie reached a breaking point, and in that moment, she made a decision that changed everything. She chose to rewrite her story. Through therapy, Natalie began to unpack her wounds, tracing the roots of her insecurities and recognizing how deeply her father's absence had shaped her beliefs. But more importantly, she learned that those beliefs weren't facts. They were interpretations, stories she could rewrite. With time, reflection, and self-love, Natalie changed the narrative. She stopped viewing herself as the abandoned daughter and started seeing herself as the empowered woman who survived, who endured, who rose above. She reframed her father's absence, not as a reflection of her worth, but as a reflection of his limitations. She chose to stop carrying his emotional absence like a badge of shame and instead wore her healing journey as a badge of strength. Natalie also invested in self-love, setting boundaries, nurturing her inner child, building relationships that reflected her worth. Slowly, her life transformed. Her confidence grew, her relationships became healthier, and most importantly, Her internal narrative shifted from victimhood to empowerment. You can create this transformation too. It starts with a simple yet radical act: choosing to rewrite your story. That means questioning the limiting beliefs inherited from your father's absence. The belief that you're unworthy, unlovable, destined to be abandoned. It means replacing those beliefs with truths rooted in your worth, your resilience, your ability to grow beyond what happened to you. Practically, rewriting your story involves reflection, compassion, and conscious action. Journaling is a powerful tool. Writing down the limiting beliefs you carry, then challenging them with evidence of your worth. Therapy offers guided space to explore your story and create new, empowering interpretations. Affirmations, self-care, and surrounding yourself with people who uplift you reinforce your new narrative daily. Rewriting your story also means recognizing your growth. Look back at the challenges you've overcome, the strength you've cultivated, the wisdom you've gained. You are not the same person you were in the shadow of your father's absence. You are wiser, braver, and more capable than you often give yourself credit for. And here's the most empowering truth. Your father's absence is part of your story, but it is not the whole story. You get to decide what defines you now: your choices, your healing, your courage to rise, your ability to love yourself fiercely, your determination to create a future rooted not in pain, but in possibility. So here's your reflective challenge today. What new story about yourself are you ready to live, starting today? Let that question sink in. Imagine a narrative where you are not defined by absence, but by presence. Your presence for yourself, your commitment to growth, your belief in your worth. Imagine showing up as the author of your life, writing chapters filled with empowerment, love, resilience, and joy. Your healing journey is ongoing, but the decision to rewrite your story can happen in an instant. The moment you say, "I am more than what happened to me," you have the power to shift from abandoned to empowered, from wounded to wise, from hidden to fully, unapologetically present. The absent father effect may have shaped the early pages of your life, but you hold the pen now. The next chapter is unwritten, and you, strong, worthy, whole, get to decide how it unfolds. Conclusion. Your father's absence may have shaped your past, the quiet ache, the insecurities, the patterns that played out in love, confidence, and self-worth. But let me remind you, it does not define your future. The emptiness, the longing, the questions of, "Am I enough?" They may have been born from his absence, but they do not have the power to dictate where your story goes next. You are the author now. You hold the pen, and every step you've taken to listen, reflect, and understand brings you closer to rewriting your life from a place of strength, not pain. Maybe for years, you thought his absence meant you weren't lovable, worthy, or whole. But here's the truth. You are worthy of love, belonging, and self-respect, regardless of your history. His limitations, his absence, his inability to show up emotionally, physically, or mentally were never a reflection of your value. They were his struggles, not your identity. Today, you stand at a crossroads, the moment where awareness turns into action, the moment where the invisible wounds are acknowledged, and the healing begins. You've uncovered the hidden patterns, understood the shadow of absence, and learned that healing is possible through self-love, awareness, setting boundaries, and rewriting your narrative. So, if this message resonated with you, if even one part of this journey sparked recognition in your heart, I invite you to take action. Like this video, comment below your biggest takeaway. Let your voice be heard, because your story matters. Share this with someone who needs to hear this truth. Maybe a sister, a friend, a daughter carrying silent wounds of an absent father. And most importantly, subscribe to this channel for more life-changing insights, healing conversations, and empowering reminders that you are not alone. Your healing journey starts now, and you never have to walk it alone.